big question that a lot of young people are thinking about. How much home can you actually afford in 2025?
Brent, I am so excited to talk about this because housing has become this just very unique thing. It's almost like for people today that are not homeowners yet, it's almost like it's the white whale. It is like that unachievable goal that it seems to keep moving further and further and further away. And so one of the questions we want people to be able to answer is, okay, when it comes to buying a home, when it comes to making this significant life decision, how do I do it? And how do I do it well?
Well, I think a good place to start, and I was really, it's interesting when I get a resource that shares data so people can actually use this data to figure out where they fall into things. There's this interesting map that's come on in our purview of how much people have to make to afford homes in each state.
Yeah, this is the median income recommended for buying a 3-bedroom home by state. So how much does my median income need to be in this state to buy a 3-bedroom home?
As provided by data from Visual Capitalists. If you haven't looked at their stuff, it's very interesting. But look at this. I mean, there's a spread. Now, I guess if we were trying to figure out the lowest, I've been told by the team West Virginia at 71,000.
Yep, down there.
And then if you want to go to the highest, we have to look out to California.
I think it's actually Hawaii is the highest. I believe.
Yeah, 229. Look at that down there, floating off the coast of Texas there. Mm-hmm. I know it's not actually off the coast of Texas, by the way, but it is one of those things because I was immediately drawn to, because I know we have a lot of listeners out in California, so I saw that 210. But you're right, Hawaii's at 229,000. But still, all the numbers, like here in Tennessee, where we are, 121,000. That is, and what I know is when we compare to the median income of the typical American household, these numbers are higher.
Yeah, if you just averaged all 50 of these together, the average is about $124,000. Well, if you think about $124,000 being the recommended income, and we know that right now the median household income in this country is right at about $76,000, they're saying that you need about 160% of the median household income in order to buy a 3-bedroom home. That's daunting. And I think it's causing a lot of people to potentially make, I don't want to say dangerous, but aggressive financial decisions that are putting them a little bit further on the risk spectrum, I think, than they probably ought to be.
I know we have tried to be very proactive on this, and that's why if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, we actually have a home buying calculator. So this way you can come in, yes, listen to this conversation we're about to give where we give you even more insight. But then later you can go back to our website and actually put in your specific numbers and see how this all lays out for you so you can make that good personal finance decision to maximize this opportunity.
So when you think about buying a home, what are some of the things that you should do? Well, number one, we want you to think about our home buying rules. Again, you can go to moneyguy.com/resources, check out our whole home buying hub. But we want you to recognize that there are a few rules that you should adhere to. I'm going to make sure that I'm in this location for at least 5 to 7 years. If it's my first home, I don't have to put down 20%. I can put down less. And maybe the most important one when it comes to affordability is that my housing costs cannot exceed 25% of my monthly gross income. And if I can answer those 3 questions for a home, I'm likely going to put myself in a sound financial decision. So one of the questions that people that I imagine you have is, okay, we saw what data visualists said. Okay, based on what we think, this is what the median income should be to be able to afford a home. But what about based on my income? How much income should I have in order to afford a home? Or based on my income, how much home could I afford? And so we wanted to walk through a case study.
Oh, a good old Money Guy case study. What would it be without us throwing some numbers into a spreadsheet? I love it.
So we're going to assume that, obviously, we're going to follow the Money Guy rules. We're going to assume that you have a 5% down payment. So you're going to, whatever house you buy, you're going to put down 5%. And then we're going to assume that the prevailing interest rate right now is about 6.5% for a 30-year fixed mortgage, which I think is in line in most parts of the country. So then the question becomes, at different income levels, what size home does that mean that you could afford? And first, when we said, okay, what if you just make the median household income, $75,000 household income, what size home could you buy with those assumptions? It's about just under a $250,000 home.
I think a lot of those people, you need to move to the Midwest.
Right. Like obviously. What about if you have an income that's like $100,000 household, that would suggest that you could afford a home that's right at about $330,000. And then if your income is $125,000 as a household, based on the Money Guy rules, that would suggest that the home that you could buy would be about $409,000 for a home that you would be able to reasonably afford. Now, a lot of people say, Brian, this doesn't, okay, I see it and I get it and I understand, but in my area, it's really hard to find homes in this price point.
This is one of those scenarios where it's hard for me because I'm an optimist on everything, and I'm still optimistic that something has to give because we can't have young people not being able to afford houses in the United States. So I don't know what that thing that gives, whether it's income outpacing inflation, where we get some equilibrium because maybe real estate's not appreciating as fast as it was, during that high inflationary period. But something has to give. But in the meantime, I do think that we can fall back on some key things. There's some takeaways. The first thing is it's okay. We share this all the time. In the financial order of operations, we do want you processing through the steps, but it's okay to even take a step back. If you have key moments in your life, like you're trying to set roots in a community and you're trying to figure out, hey, do I need to boost up my emergency reserve so I can have that 3 to 5% down payment? It's okay if there's a moment in time that you actually have to take a step back on purpose to fulfill those life goals.
And remember, money is nothing more than a tool that allows you to achieve the goals that you have. And so one of the things you really need to do is sort of set your goals. And a lot of people, they do have the goal of financial independence. That is something they want to work towards. But a lot of folks say that, hey, before I get to financial independence, I'd like to be a homeowner, right? And so if that's one of your goals, it's okay to use your savings, to use your strategy to move towards that goal, even if it's not necessarily progressing you through the food. That's okay if you're in that position. The other takeaway we want you to have is that even though the traditional thinking was if you're going to buy a home, you got to do 20% down, 20% down, 20% down, that's not necessarily true. If this is your first time home purchase, we think you can put down less. Now, that doesn't mean that you only have to put down the very minimum, only 3%, but you ought to play with the numbers based on your savings rate, the capital you've been able to accumulate, and the housing in your area. What's an appropriate and reasonable down payment? Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 15%, maybe it's 20%, but you get to define that for yourself.
And then this is the big thing I want people to realize. It's a difficult time right now, but a house doesn't have to define your financial security and your success financially. We have a number of clients, especially in these high cost of living areas in the coastal communities, whether you're thinking about New York, whether you're thinking about California, San Francisco, any of those areas. We have people who work, make great incomes. They build up a lot of financial independence through assets by investing. And they rented the entire process.
That's right.
Now, and even some of them buying their first home. We've shepherded that process, buying their first home when they move to a lower cost of living area, buy that dream home in retirement. You are not defined by just the house you live in.
That's
you can still create community, even if you're paying rent on that. I know that this is less than ideal from what a lot of people start out thinking, but that's why I also say, don't let your success, too many Americans count on their house being their biggest financial asset. And Bo, that has a big flaw to it. It is what we call a use asset.
That's right.
You can't eat your house.
That's right.
You have to go take down more debt. You have to sell it. It's a very illiquid use asset. So build up your independence in those assets that we're always trying to help you build through the Money Guy Show and specifically the financial order of operations.
And we love helping you guys figure out how to do that. That's why every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, we like to show up right here and answer your questions. Speak to the things that you are curious about. I think it's hilarious. Hilarious. That wasn't a good word. I think it's hilarious. The chat's coming in. People are really trying to decide if we're live right now. Is this pre-record? Is this a premiere? What are these guys? Guys, this is live. This is live.
I will say, given credit, because I was like, guys, the data, and there was even stuff that's kind of like in the brainstorming session that we didn't throw up. I was like, this almost feels like a show, but we did decide that it was so important that to get it out there, because if it's a show, it goes on the editorial calendar. It's going to take weeks, maybe even a month to get out there, and this data was just too important So no, indeed, we are live.
We are live, and being live, we love to answer your questions live. So if you have a question that you would like for us to weigh in on, we have the team out in the wings collecting your questions because we believe that there is a better way to do money. So with that, Creative Director Reby, I'm going to throw it over to you.
I'm ready. Colby P. has a question to continue some talk about housing and affordability. It says, I'm 23 and on step 6 of the FOO.
Wow.
I'm saving for my first home in a high-cost area. To keep my monthly payment at 25% of my income, I'd need to put 40% down. That is a lot. Would it be smarter to go ahead and put the 40% down up front or do 20% and then keep the rest in a high-yield savings account, paying a bit more each month? What do you think? Interesting concept, or is he getting too fancy with it?
Well, Colby, let's think through why do we do the 25%? Like, why is that a thing that we put into housing? Is because we don't want you to get into the situation where the cost of just keeping a roof over your head becomes so expensive that when that unknown thing happens, when there's a reduction in force, when there's a job change, when you get laid off, when something like that happens, that now all of a sudden you're in this spot where you're like, I can't make next month's rent payment. I can't make next month's mortgage payment. It's why we want you to have a fully funded emergency fund that sits there as a fund for emergencies of 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And we want your housing to be at a reasonable cost that even if you had to pivot, even if you had to go do something else that maybe is not the ideal thing for you to be doing, you could go out and hopefully create enough income, enough replacement income to be able to cover the cost of that housing. My nervousness, Brian, with him just putting down 20%, and that balloons the housing cost to 35% or 40% of his monthly take home, is that just doesn't leave a whole lot extra. It doesn't leave a lot left. You agree, disagree, want to find out?
No, I have so many components. So when I saw Colby's question immediately, because we did a studio tour. This is probably 2 weeks ago. Nick and I did this studio tour, and a great guy, and he was an attorney, and he was a young guy, just like Colby. Sounds like he's a young guy doing big things, and he asked me some life questions about his career, and I was like, go find who the best person who does what you want to do. Let them mentor you, to get some tutelage under them. And he was like, but I'm probably going to have to, and I was like, and you might have to move to do that. And he's like, oh, I'm house hacking. I just bought a duplex. And I'm like, this is something, sometimes for younger people, be careful, Colby, trying at 23 to already try to fit the house solution in. Because the biggest thing sometimes as a young person you can do, and I'll get to the answer of his question next, but I want to talk about the mindset stuff first, is I think successful people, and Bo, you were guilty of this too, I was guilty of this, we're always trying to go through the checklist of life as fast as possible because we're used to being rewarded for being good and fast at life. But I'll tell you, there are certain decisions you might be making that is a mistake. And your career, where you do your career, because building that shovel of your annual income is a big thing. So that's the first thing. And housing, by the way, locks you down. You lose that's why, man, oh man, do people panic when they lose their job and they realize they're in a high income situation and they might have to move to replace that income. How many people also, as we're pulling people, not everybody's working from home like they were.
That's
so
right.
They all moved to these different communities, and now the jobs are required to come back, and it's really creating some weird distress in the real estate marketplace as well. Colby, I had to say that first, because as 23, you're still trying to probably figure out where you're landing on this job versus career. Now, I get the feeling you might potentially have a career, since you're already talking about step 6 at age 23.
You must be doing all right. Must be doing pretty good.
And that means you're probably making a strong enough income that this is the other thing I think financial mutants have struggled, especially financial mutants struggle with, is how do you free yourself to say it's okay to do something outside of just saving and building. And that's why I love 25% as a guiding light, is because everything you make over that, you can free yourself to say, I'll spend it. I'll consume it. I'll do something. Unless I'll put the asterisk or the caveat, because we put the personal and personal finance. If you're part of the FIRE movement, FINE movement, Next Endeavor, and you might be leaving at 45 or 50, well, of course you have to have a higher savings rate. But if you're going more of the traditional route, I'm okay with somebody making sure they're getting 25% saving, and then they want to, if you want to load it up so that you have that big down payment, because it's exactly what Bo was saying. You just don't want to get in a desperate situation where you lose your job or some big life change happens, and now you have to start making desperate decisions because you really didn't have as much financial foundation underneath you as much as possible. Debt, specifically levered debt, and that's what mortgages, real estate investing, it is. You're buying a very big asset for typically very minimal down. That's great while markets are appreciating. That's great while good times rock and roll and income's flowing in. But all of a sudden when the music stops and everybody's trying to find their chairs, you find that lever part, that the debt can get very dangerous very quickly.
I just want to add, Reba, can I add one more thing to this? I just think is worth noting. Colby, you're 23, which who knows? Maybe you've been working for like 5, 6, 7 years. I'm going to assume this means you're like pretty early on in your career. And so even the thought around like making a housing choice right now, I don't know if you're married, have kids, any other circumstances, but I just know for me personally, when I was 23, life just changed a lot from 23 to 28. Like there's a lot of things that happened in there that impacted the type of housing that I desired, the location I wanted to be in, all of those things. And so if you're already at this young age trying to kind of like stretch to make buying a house work, it might be okay to just breathe and pause for a moment to make sure that when you make this huge, significant life decision, you're making it at the right time. And I can tell you this because I did this wrong. Like a lot of what we share with you guys is us telling you mistakes that we made. I bought my first house way too young when I had no business buying it, way before I should have. Like it was a little foolhardy. And I look back on that and I thought, man, I put a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on myself unnecessarily, where there were other solutions that I could have implemented that would have likely worked out just as well, if not better. So at 23 years old, I would just measure 2 or 3 times before you like plant that flag. You agree? Any wisdom?
No, look, I wanted you to buy that house as fast as possible because that locked you in.
Yeah, I could.
He wasn't
That's
moving.
true.
He wasn't quitting to go somewhere else when he bought a house in the hometown where my business was at that time.
Exactly
that was
right.
more of a Brian decision, not
So
a financial decision.
So consider that too. Is that there's the other side of it. Is that's why you do need to be careful. Now, look, it's worked out swimmingly well for Bo
worked out
and
all right.
for me as well. But I'm just telling
good.
you might want to think about that too, is because it is a big life decision when you set roots and buy a house.
Yep.
Hence the 5 to 7 years in the home buying checklist.
That's right.
No, that's great. Colby, great question. I hope that helps shed some light on your decision making. Remember, we have a lot of great home buying resources at moneyguy.com/resources. We have a whole home buying checklist of what to consider before you make that big decision, and also a home buying calculator, which we've discussed in the beginning portion of this show, that will help you see how much home you can afford.
You know what I like about this new set? Is Bo's drink is so close to me.
No. Oh.
I just stole his thunder.
Opened your beverage
It was
for
on
you.
my side. I think we could probably say this is pretty close
We're
to
gonna
my
have to
side.
draw a line in the middle.
Because I think Bo plays a game. I think he plays a game. He waits until I'm in the middle of an answer, and then he tries to figure a time to pop the top on his drink. I just saw it so close to my side. I was like, I'm putting an end to this craziness right now.
I think that's.
Now, did you see how clean I did that so I didn't get anywhere
You
near
did?
your
No, it was
drinking
great.
area?
No,
I didn't want to,
no fingers on there.
Bo
Yep.
is not a germ person. We could drop an M&M right now and he'd jump out there and eat it. So he wasn't worried. I was more worried for him.
My methodology is I always finish my coffee first before I move to my other beverage. So it's more like you can call it like my drinking order of operations. I do this one first and then I move. I call it the do.
I still think there's more strategy that goes into the timing of popping that top than he's letting on, though.
Hey, can I do a few housekeeping things?
Of course.
Is that okay? We had so if you guys if you're not subscribed, you should subscribe right now to the channel so that we know you're out there, because we have new content coming out almost every day of the week. On Mondays, we have either Reacts or Making a Millionaire coming out, and we just had a brand new React hit yesterday. And if you do not know what a red-tail hawk sounds like, you're going to want to go check out that React so that you can understand what that sounds like. We also have...
And then also read the comments so you know what he means.
We also have Making a Millionaire that comes out every Monday. So if you're not subscribed, you haven't checked that out, we had one come out last week that was fantastic. You should go check this out. It's for millionaires and millionaires in the making. And we're covering a wide swath. It's people right at the very beginning of their journey to people dead in the messy middle to people who have made it and are on the sweet side of the financial equation. So if you haven't checked that out, do that. Tuesdays we have our live streams. Wednesdays we have our little mini shows, our little compact heavy hitter shows. And then Fridays we obviously have the big show that comes out. So if you're not subscribed, you should be, so that you know every time we have new content.
Did you say the mini shows?
I did on Wednesdays.
Because I cut those out last week.
That's why I did this right now, so I wanted to make sure.
Good pick me up. By the way, it is interesting. Things you didn't know and you learned, you're this many days old when you learned it, is that we've been lied to our whole life. So we found out by just the comments section that what the sound we think for bald eagles, which is the the whole, where they come in, it's really a red-tailed hawk, according to our audience in the comments section. And because they said a bald eagle actually sounds more like
a crying baby.
No. They said a seagull.
Oh, a seagull.
Yeah. Like a seagull with it. And sure enough, we went and looked. And it was a little over, and we have hawks around us all the time, and I love hearing. You can tell when a hawk is in pursuit of something. This also another way. Now, somebody fact check this because I'm doing this off memory. The MGM lion roar at the beginning is supposedly a tiger.
Like the tiger's roar.
So
was
somebody
more
fact
impressive.
check that, but I've always been told that. So how many other things?
Have we been
the
duped
sound
on?
effects that are being pumped in? Like I know at fist fights, if you watch A-Team. Oh, that it doesn't really sound
That's
that way
not the
when you
actual
hit somebody. I mean,
we knew
all
that one though. Come on.
But it's just interesting. These are things that make you go,
Was it me and you? I promise we're gonna get back. Was it me and you a couple of years ago where we went on that? We went on this deep rabbit trail, watching people make sound effects. Was that me and you? Where like you watch a YouTube video and it shows you.
Something
It
you
shows
guys
he
would
has
do.
other friends. I might have done that.
No,
but
I'm pretty
we've
sure.
done so many goofy things I've already forgotten.
Fact check. It is a tiger.
See?
Look at
that. We've been lied to. By the way, they lied to us about our finances too. So that's why we're here to not only open up the curtain to the sound effects because our audience is smart too, but we're going to help you do that with finances.
I loved it. Somebody in the chat said, "Will Reedy allow a red-tailed hawk sound on the show?"
Peaches and herbs.
We told him before the show, don't bring this up.
No, I sang a little bar in that React video.
You did.
And none of you reacted. I was like, man, nobody knows that song. And then my team, my audience, put that, and I didn't know who sang that. I just knew the song from my childhood. It was cool.
He's about to start saying he was about
to.
The moment didn't hit me.
I guess so. You'll have to go watch the React and hear him sing.
It
And
felt
I
so
think
good.
you do the red-tailed hawk sound in the React as well. So
if you
really
wanna,
full of
if you want to see more
I
Brian
think they
sound
heard
effects, you should go check out that React video.
I mean, let's see if I can do a seagull, aka bald eagle. It's not as good as the red tail.
It doesn't evoke the same feeling.
Patriot Pete.
That was his name.
Patriot Pete.
Okay. Would you like to do another question?
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Did we run off the entire audience?
Yes. There's 4 people left in the live stream right now.
There may be a few more people here listening still. All right. Shan has a question. It says, how do the money guys feel about selling the winners in a non-tax advantaged brokerage account to fulfill the emergency fund steps? It feels like I'm cheating the foo.
In a non-tax advantaged brokerage account to fulfill the emergency.
So he must not have an emergency fund.
It sounds to me
non-tax advantage. So it's an after-tax account.
Selling the winners,
but you got to pay taxes on that.
Yeah. If you do not have an emergency fund, Brian, we hold the thing up. We have this 9-step process called the financial order of operations, where you do step 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and step 4 is a fully funded emergency reserve. Well, a lot of people get it out of whack and they don't find the foo early enough in their journey, and they might have a big taxable account that has a bunch of invested assets. They've got mutual funds and stocks and ETFs and stuff like that. But they have a paltry emergency fund. And they just have like this little emergency fund that might be just bridging you month to month or maybe 1 or 2 months of
expenses. They have an access to cash trap is what they got.
That's right. And so in that situation, we will tell people, hey, you really ought to consider selling some of your brokerage assets so that you can fully fund that emergency fund. Now, whether you're selling winners or losers, in my opinion, is that's a non-issue right here. The good news about selling losers is you get to harvest the losses. If you sell winners, then you have to pay capital gains. If you can sell some losers and some winners, you can net to zero. You can make it tax neutral. But that is that's like a side quest. The big thing here is if you don't have an emergency fund, you should, and you need to have one because you don't know when the unknown unknowns are coming your way.
Yeah, you don't want to end up making a desperate decision just because you got cute with how you did your investments, and that's why I would say it's weird to say I'm going to sell my winners because that implies that there's probably some taxable gains. I'd rather you just be tax smart. And it's the same way when we have people come in as prospects and they become clients, we immediately try to figure out how do we get them where they need to be, but do it in the most tax advantage way. Now that could come in several forms. We look at your entire portfolio and say, look, we got to get you off this access to cash because that's not as good as a fully funded emergency fund. And we're going to look and see what your losers are, your gains, what we think the prospects are going forward on these investments and make that choice. And then we might even take into account, hey, you have a bonus coming next month? That's because maybe there's a timing element that fixes this as well. That's why you got to do this 360. You got to look at all the components. It's hard to give you a rule and just say, yeah, go sell the winners. That just doesn't connect with all the different variables that go into good personal financial planning. It is the personal part of financial planning.
And I want to be clear, the little last part of Shan's question says, it feels like I'm cheating the foo by doing this. And I want to be clear, you're not cheating the foo. You got the foo out of order and you got lucky.
You did foo-ish, which we know is foolish.
Yeah, it's no difference. I have this car that I've financed for 84 months, but I can afford. That's not. No, that's you got it out of order and you didn't get caught naked, but
definitely some skinny dipping probably going on there though.
All right, good answer. Shan, thank you so much for submitting the question and for being with us on the live stream today. Burning Phoenix has a question next for you.
Oh, what does a burning phoenix sound like, I wonder?
Oh, I don't know. It says, if I've recently received a large pay increase, 50% plus, which is very exciting, congrats, how long should I wait before considering my new pay for things like the 23-8 rule and the 25% housing rule? Should I wait a year, 2 years? How long?
Well, I definitely want you to make sure that this new income is here to stay. If you're doing a math crime and you got like a sign-on bonus and you're including your sign-on bonus as part of your annual compensation, that's what's causing it to be a 50% increase. Well, that's obviously a temporary thing. But if this pay increase is legit and this job you've taken is legit and you have a reasonable belief that it will and should continue on, it's not a unique anomaly for this 1 year, then I think that you can start using it for the rules that we have, like 23-8 or like your home buying rules. But if I just change jobs and I'm like, man, Brian, I just changed jobs, I got a 50% pay increase, immediately I'm going to buy a more expensive house. That may be a little bit aggressive because generally when good things happen or when good things in your life go on, you want to think about the hedonic treadmill.
Well, is the way the heart of that question was asked was actually looking for the opposite. Whereas you get the big pay raise and you say, hey, because my income is so much higher now, does it justify me to go ahead and boost up bigger car, bigger house? Because
that's what I was saying. I think you got, my opinion, you just changed jobs.
Because he's going to look at his number. He's going to look at, he now has this higher income, but he's going to see the requirement to use that higher income, and it's going to be much higher than what he was making, so his assets haven't caught up. Mm-hmm. So he's probably feeling a little squeezed by that. And I think you're on the same page. Is that, look, I think that when it comes to consumption, I like the fact of slowing the roll of making sure this sticks. That way it's signing bonuses, RSUs, all these one-off things that might be boosting income because you had a good year. But I do think that it's not uncommon. Like we look at the Millionaire Next Door formula that we've talked about for years. You know, that's where you take your income times your age, divide it by 10, and you figure out are your investments, your net worth higher? And if it's twofold, you're a prodigious accumulator of wealth. If it's one time, then you're just an average accumulator. And if it's under, then you're really behind the curve. Well, the problem is for somebody who's under 40 years of age, you just haven't had enough time for your assets to keep up. And that's why you'll see a lot of things, even if you use our net worth dashboard tool, if you go to learn.moneyguy.com, I think there's nothing wrong when you have huge pay raises and it skews your data, especially on your income versus your assets, to do like a 3-year moving average to kind of moderate out or smooth out those huge income elements. But when it comes to consumption decisions, I want you to be as conservative as possible because it just scares me that you have a good year, you start making lifestyle choices, it could come back to bite you really quick.
And I just, again, I'd spread them out. I got a new job. I got a big pay raise. Let me enjoy this for a while. Okay, maybe now we want to upgrade the car.
You're spot on with the hedonic treadmill.
Let me enjoy this for a while. Okay, maybe now we want to upgrade the house. Okay, let me enjoy that for a while. Spread those things out. You get to have more happiness
Good
longer.
stuff should be spread out. Bad stuff, stack it in as fast as possible so you can get back to your copacetic, level of happiness as fast as possible. That's why the hedonic treadmill works. That's why lottery winners are horrible at this, is they get a big windfall of money and they just go more. Boats, houses, cars, and then they wake up one day and go, man, where's the emotional fulfillment I thought I was going to get out of that? I like spreading out good decisions, good celebration moments like the new car, new house. Those things should have some distance between them so you don't smell the new car smell anymore before you move into the bigger house. That's where people screw that up all the time. Make the journey as rewarding as it should be as you reach these successful moments. Don't stack it all in at once.
Love that.
Awesome. Burning Phoenix, thank you for the question.
You want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
Because apparently, so I get to see the chat, right?
Oh.
And apparently sometimes in the live chat, ads will pop up or whatever, and people, it looks like, and everyone is like affirming this. We just had an ad pop up for bacon.
Bacon?
Like bacon is advertising on the Money Guy channel. I'm for that.
It's like a specific brand of bacon?
I don't know,
Big
but
bacon
I'm like, big bacon fan here. It's on brand.
Oh, man.
I'm just trying to say little things to affirm, because people still don't believe that we are live right now. They think that this is like AI generated, that's how we're doing the questions right now. This is real. This is us. I want you guys to know that.
Really? Okay.
You're not sure
No,
if it's
we
real?
are. This is us.
I'm here.
You're not sure if this is real life.
We just had
Ryan.
a Making a Millionaire guest that made a reference on when she realized about debt paying off with the Matrix, and I thought it was we very well,
This could be the Matrix.
exactly.
Good to know. I'll watch out for that. All right, Michael C. says, what is the best way to save up for large expected expenses that aren't necessarily emergencies? For example, living in an aging house and needing to replace the fence, the deck, the windows, etc. Thanks.
I'll tell you, I love sinking funds. The idea of a sinking fund is it's this fund I put sort of on the side for a known expense that's coming. And for most folks in most circumstances, it's above and beyond in addition to my emergency fund. So if I know I have something coming up, like, man, okay, I've got the roof that I've got to replace, or I want to start saving for a new car, or there's something I know I'm going to have, one of the things I might think through is, okay, based on how much I want to save, based on the amount of money that I'm going to be putting towards my future self, in the ideal scenario, I would save above and beyond that 25% for whatever that sinking fund is. So I'm going to have to put a roof on. I'm going to start saving X number of dollars for X number of months so that when it's time to replace that roof, I've got the money there already mentally accounted for. Now, in the circumstance where your income or the living expenses or whatever creates an environment where it causes you to deviate from the 25% savings, that's okay so long as the goal is justifiable and you work through that adjustment period quickly, meaning, okay, I got to back down my savings a bit because I know I'm going to have to replace the roof. So I'm going to save for that roof, but I'm going to save as aggressive as I can, as fast as I can. And as soon as I get there, I'm going to get right back on the savings train, get right back on the foo. I think that known coming expenses are awesome and, in my opinion, way better than unknown coming expenses.
You said the key thing, though. This needs to be in addition to your emergency fund. The trap I think financial mutants will fall into is that they will, because this if you have big house down payment, car purchase, replacing windows, all the things, AC unit, whatever the big upcoming expense is, it needs to be in addition to the emergency fund. That's why I liked you talking about sinking funds, because the trap is, if you have this, this is coming up, and then you have all these things happen where you buy a new car, and then all of a sudden the AC goes out and you have to put the new $10,000 AC unit on. All of a sudden your emergency fund is less than 3 to 6 months. You've gotten yourself in that dangerous territory where you're making desperate decisions. So I don't want you to have a false sense of security where you are building up these sinking funds and you tell people, yes, I have 3 to 6 months saved up, but do you? Or have you just built up to cover these expenses that for sure are happening? Now, there are curveball things. We've had young people come to us and say, hey, I know 5 to 7 years in the future, I want to have a house down payment. So I'm going to go ahead and boost up. And, that's 5 years in the future. So probably some of that could go into that zone of emergency funds, since this is a decision years in the future. But for things like you said, like windows and, house repairs, cars, these things are for sure happening. So I think that they go into addition of emergency funds so they don't deplete that.
And it's okay for this to just a high yield savings account.
Yeah,
I mean, right now,
sure.
like money market mutual funds still paying above 4%. So even if you have a seeking fund, it's not like you have to put it in the piggy bank. You can still have it sitting in an interest bearing account earning interest. It'd be silly not to do that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Michael C., thank you for the question. I really hope that helps as you think that through. Caleb S. has a question up next. My wife and I are trying to plan for the future needs of a special needs child. We're on step 8 of the FOO. How do we plan for needs that are not fully known with a 4-year-old with special needs?
Again, this is one of those unknown unknowns. This is a life thing that happens, and obviously there are a number of different things you have to think through and consider, but there are some financial implications you want to think about. Brian, you've talked about this a lot in terms of how you've navigated and thought that. What was your mind process and thought process as you've kind of thought through this?
Full disclosure, I don't have it all figured out, because I think anybody who has a child that their life is just different. There's a lot of elements to and I want to go ahead and free you as the parent. I think sometimes, especially as financial mutants, we feel like we have to have it all figured out. Just free yourself from that. It's okay. Enjoy the journey, because even though your child might not be able to do everything that you might have thought when you first had this awesome baby, there's still a lot of special sweetness that comes from having because the way they process the world is different. I know for my daughter, she's just a happy builder. I mean, it's a really sweet thing. So I would, I want to mention some tools so you have something to use. Is able accounts are something that keep getting stronger and powerful, because states are more coming online. They increase the thresholds, but you do need to be aware of that. Some key things happen with Social Security and so forth, and benefits integration when your child becomes majority age, that you need to know those limits. So that's why I want to tell you tools like Able, and so I don't screw up what's the website I usually tell people to go research. It's like
NS or
is it NR? Just type in National Resource Able. Bo will figure it out. .org or something. But
is it ablenrc.org?
It might be. It's going to tell you all the different states and tell you which resources. But you can look into that. But you're going to probably need to definitely. Your estate planning is going to look different. Your trust planning is going to be different. So I would just don't put it all on yourself at once. But just know over the coming years you're going to want to bring in an attorney to help you work through how your assets integrate, because you have to plan for. After you're not here, how do you structure it? Because I think our even with Able accounts, you have to be careful that you go out there and load up these assets because you want to make sure your child has assets when you're not here. Well, there's special structures you have to do that so that you don't blow up some integration with benefits in the community and other things like that. I know that I hate when I give an answer that I gave you breadcrumbs, but it's just because all this is so personal, because I don't know what your income, I don't know what your level of assets, because there is a social safety net depending upon where you live in the country. And all that has to be integrated into how you're planning and building your assets as well. So that's why I have to give you it depends. And that doesn't feel good, but hopefully I gave you some resources
and
there.
You said from a mindset standpoint, because again, it sounds like Caleb's child is 4 years old. I think what I've heard you say in the past is one of the things you did is you were more conservative in your assumptions, meaning that you planned to be able to more conservative in your assumptions, more aggressive in your saving. Like, hey, I know this is what I would do otherwise because, I want to have a retirement and do college for the kid, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But because I recognize the weight that there's going to be someone I'm going to have to take care of for longer than the standard trajectory, it just causes me to be a little more conservative in what I assume I'm going to have as a rate of return or timeline, and be a little more aggressive in how much I save and how I fund that, because I'm saving for multiple retirements, not just mine and my wife's, but also for my kids. And so I think as you approach that and as you think about how you prioritize, it'll even inform decisions you make around where you live, what type of house you live in, the kind of automobiles that you purchase. All of those things kind of come into the fold. But I think if you can start thinking about it and planning for it early on, what you'll find is that you can kind of make the finances sort of one less thing to think about and focus on the other aspects.
And I would say at 4 years of age, you do need to make big life decisions. Like, remember, we moved, so by the time my daughter started kindergarten, so we could have this special school system that this special school, but it's still, we had a good public school system for my oldest daughter, and then we moved to this area, so there was a special school for my youngest. And that at the time, I think, and this is, I want to share this experience, so that Caleb can hear this for themselves. I thought this was going to be the silver bullet. You find this brilliant school, you pay a fortune for it, and you think this is going to fix. Because I still was in the thought that I could find a silver bullet that would fix the issue. It didn't fix it, but it gave me peace of mind knowing that I had checked the box and done the best I possibly could to let my daughter become the best version of herself. And there's a peace that comes when you threw the kitchen sink at giving happiness, giving resources to something. But I just want to prepare, as a parent who's gone through this journey, and now she's 15, I've got a whole nother journey of decisions we have to make on as she approaches adulthood, which is not going to be the easiest thing and actually gives me pause. But it's just part of the journey. But I just tell you, you don't have to feel like if you're trying to solve it, you'll get peace. It's amazing the ability of the human mind to build comfort and peace, and find a copacetic level of happiness from this hard journey. And you'll have dark days, but you'll have good days. But you're going to make it through this, and we'll continue. I mean, I know we've done some resources. I don't know if they're out to the public because we were still working on the scenes, but there's been things.
We got some stuff in the background.
We got some stuff in the background that will hopefully be able to help people like Caleb as you're trying to figure out to make sure you are giving your child the best opportunity possible financially as well as through life.
That's great.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Caleb, thank you for asking the question and being here on the live stream today too. All right, ready for the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Coco Foro Toro asks, I had to dip into my emergency fund, and now I'm struggling to build back up my emergency funds. I've paused investing, but should I continue doing both? I'm nervous about missing out on ABB, or always be buying. Oh,
yeah.
Thanks, Money Guy team.
But she kind of answered this question right there with the way she asked that.
Here's my opinion. You got to get the emergency fund back. Like as much as we want you building, as much as we want you to have your dollars working for you, your emergency fund, Brian, will you hold the thing up? There's a reason that outside of employer match, emergency fund exists before all of the other saving, all of the other building, all of the other growing. So, Coco, what I would tell you to do is, man, get so creative in how you can get step 4 fully funded as quickly as possible. It might be cutting your expenses down to the quick. I mean, it might be cutting out Netflix, cutting out eating out, cutting out the subscription, like whatever those things are to get your footprint as small as possible to be able to fully fund that. Get that done, and then you can get back on the savings side. Or you might be in a situation where, hey, okay, I got to go figure out a way to increase my income, whether that be through my current vocation or a side gig, side hustle, picking up something on the weekends, whatever that thing might be. Those are really your only two expenses if you want to speed up your timeline. You either have to spend less, get your footprint down, or you have to make more, increase your income to be able to do that. But what you don't want to do is have yourself be in a situation where you don't have cash. Because when you don't have cash, it puts you in the place where you do make desperate decisions, and you end up in step number 3. We're going to hold the thing up again. You end up in step number 3, high interest debt. Because you know what people do when they don't have cash, don't have an emergency fund? They just start to swipe. And that is a hole that gets deeper and deeper and deeper. We have a great slide illustration that we're going to show at some point in the future that really drives home just how detrimental compound interest can be. It's one of Brian's, or how detrimental compound interest can be when it works against. It's one of Brian's favorite illustrations we've done. I'm super excited.
Coco answered their own question, and the fact that first sentence was, I used some of my emergency fund, but I'm having trouble getting it filled back up. Mm-hmm. Well, that shows me that your income is not at such a level, and the savings rate that it lets you take that emergency fund and put it right back in there. It's taking you some time to build up. That means that you're susceptible or in the danger zone, that if something bad happened, you'd have to make a desperate decision. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that's catastrophic. Bo just hit on it, is that when you see that credit card debt is over 20%, when you see that what typically, whether it's medical emergencies or a car accident, or it's these things that you're not counting on. And I just don't want you to fall prey to, because we're financial mutants, we always want to maximize. We're trying to look for opportunities, but you're running astray if you move on too soon without fixing this. You got to triage your situation. But harness the energy of your frustration that it's taking you a while to do the things that Bo was talking about, the 2 levers, whether it's make more income, cut your expenses, so that you feel the pressure, you feel that the time, because that's the most valuable resource that you're also missing out on. It's not only the potential to hit the high interest rate, it's also that you have a timer in the background of every month that you don't invest. That should elevate. That should feel bad, so that keeps you motivated to be the best version of yourself, to get out of this as fast as possible. So harness that negative feeling to get serious, to pinpoint, laser focus, and get yourself back on the track as fast as possible.
Love it.
That's great. Coco Foro Toro, thank you for the question. Ken B's question is up next.
By the way, cocoa, is that feminine, or is that just like coconut?
I don't know.
I don't think
honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, could be either way.
I know some cocos. That's why I jumped to that. But then I was like, I have a lot of drinks I like that are coconut inspired. So it could be that too.
All this is going on in your mind, wasn't it?
Well, we're going on a cruise this summer.
Oh, well, of course.
So I've been watching
coconuts.
so many cruise videos recently, and every drink, it seems like, in the Caribbean has coconut in it, which I love.
Obviously.
You can never get enough. Just like lime is great. Coconut's great. You put those things, there's lots of opportunity
you put the
there.
Lime in there. We were all thinking it,
was
right?
good.
Are you one of those people who, before you go on a trip, like when you book a cruise or you're going to go to a place, are you like, even after you've booked it, are you then the person who like, I'm going to watch the YouTube videos, I'm going to read every TripAdvisor, and
I think half the fun is the preparation.
I bet you probably spend as much time looking at researching, thinking about the trip as you do on the trip.
There are so many things in my life. Big purchases, I will over-research it to the nth degree. I mean, I had a dear client, she's passed away, but me and her husband, we talk about her all the time, is that me and her had a common ground because they wanted to buy an RV, and forever we were talking about all the research that she was doing on these art, and I was like, you actually enjoy the shopping.
The research is the
more
fun
than it makes me just thinking about it, because I'm very much the same way. So of course, when I'm going, it's just like I'm going to Epic Universe in the next week.
Let's go.
So I mean, I know if you
He's
don't
so
know,
excited.
you don't
Let's
know. I mean,
go.
theme parks are our jam too. So I just told you, cruise ships, theme parks. This is, if you want to increase your opportunity to probably run into me in the wild, those are the 2 places you have to be. And I'm worried I've over prepared for Epic Universe. I've watched some videos I probably shouldn't have of the ride experience, but I can't wait.
I've not heard one person say who's experiencing it now that it's under delivered. You know what I mean?
No,
so like
I'm
even
if
you
I'm worried the crowd level is going to be high. I was like, how did we not go to one of the pre-days? But we didn't. I mean, so we're going to just go in with the huddled masses and see how this thing goes.
It's what I almost feel like I get to live vicariously through him. Like I get to experience it in seeing his excitement. Then when he comes back, I get to hear all about it. I think it's awesome. Big
It's
researcher.
almost like being there.
It's almost like
So
being
if you're in Epic Universe in the coming week, we might cross paths.
You know what we
Look
ought
out for
to do?
Brian Preston in the wild.
We ought to get you one of those it's not called a selfie stick, but whatever the thing is that holds the GoPro, the stick you walk around with, and just have you walking around the theme park that way. Wouldn't that be good?
Without a doubt.
Wouldn't that be good?
I would love to do that because I watch so much of that type of content. But I'm so worried. If y'all knew me personally, I don't take a lot of pictures.
It's just not your thing.
I don't,
right?
because I'm always trying to just enjoy the moment.
You're taking
I would
mental
have to become
pictures.
very deliberate to say, okay, let me. And I don't even know if I could do it. I mean, the old man side of me might kick in to where, "Arr," but it's I don't know.
We'll see.
I do
Maybe
want to
one
burn the
day.
channel,
We'll
but
see.
who knows?
Maybe
We'll
one
see.
day. All right. Are you ready to go on to Ken B's question?
Yes, ma'am.
It says, I'm 33 years old, making $120K in Indiana.
Wow.
Nice.
I'm looking to go to graduate school in 3 years. Indiana has a very generous 529 tax credit of 20% on state income. Does this move up the FOO with tax savings?
All right,
Meaning, should
hold
he
on, let me
prioritize
think
the
about this.
529, I believe?
That's a
Okay.
state credit. Mm-hmm. So credit is different than deduction.
So India has a very generous 529 tax credit on 20% on state income. Let's move to the food tax. I'm not going to research this right now on the spot. 20% sounds a bit, or maybe is it 20% of the contribution you get to write off your state tax? I'd have to
go read it.
I'd have to know what it is. But the question is to say, there's a tax incentive around me saving for this thing. This is less of a FOO question and more of how are you going to pay for a thing question. Meaning like, hey, if I go to
3 years is short term.
yeah, like if I go to a restaurant, am I going to pay with cash? Am I going to use my credit card? Am I going to use a gift card? That's kind of the way we're thinking about this. If you're going to pay for grad school anyways, and the way that you're going to pay for it is you're going to cash flow it, you're going to come out of pocket, by all means, you should definitely think about doing that in the most advantageous way possible. And so if using a 529 is just a short-term conduit, I put money in and then I pull money out so I can take advantage of the tax deduction, there is nothing at all wrong with that. And we actually see a lot of people do that who still, even while their kids are in college, will fund 529s current year and then take distributions the same year because they want to continue to get that state tax benefit. So it's really, the thought process is less, should I use the 529? It's, okay, if I'm going to go to grad school, what are the most optimal ways for me to pay for this? And should I pay for all the semester up front, or do I pay for it monthly, or as it goes on? Are there costs associated with that? Those are the things that I would be thinking through.
Well, I'll answer it in the context that Ken asked it, and the fact that I think that where this fits into the financial order of operations, obviously, things that are coming up in the next 3 years should be boosted levels of your emergency fund. Mm-hmm. But then once you have the money allocated and saved, now this becomes more of a financial mutant question: is how do I maximize the structure to get as much money as possible? Because remember, as a financial mutant, your money should go, 3, 5, 7% further than your peers, because you're just willing to do stuff that everybody else won't do. And I think this is part of it, is that, if you have to take some of your cash that you saved up for graduate school and you're going to go throw it into a 529, even though it's only going to be there for a short period of time to maximize a tax benefit, do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is just financial mutant 101. There's so many things in my life, whether it's stacking up how I make big purchases to see if they take credit cards or something, because I like, if I can make 2%, if I can make 3% here and there, that stuff adds up, as long as it's also built into the context of it didn't break the cash rule, because I really do want you to respect emergency reserves.
Can I throw one thing out there that's a hot take? And this is one of those things that's like, Bo, don't say it. Don't go there. Don't bring it up.
Ooh,
but I'm going to do it.
Do you say hassle factor?
Well, here's what I hear. You're 33 years old. You're making $120,000 a year, which is awesome, and it's incredible. And so one of the questions that I would ask you, and I just want to make sure you've done this analysis, is, hey, I'm going back to grad school. What's the why behind going back to grad school? Now, it may be, hey, I just want to increase my education, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that if it's something you place value on. But I would do an ROI calculator, like, is going back to grad school going to add some utility that's going to justify not only the cost, but also the time it's going to take away from me at this stage? A lot of people, again, this is my opinion, so write this down in pencil, they will end up defaulting to higher education without really thinking through, okay, why am I doing this? Is this actually going to add tangible value to something I'm trying to accomplish down the line, whether it be increased education, whatever it is, or additional pay later on in life? I just don't want you to say, okay, well, hey, I've done a lot and just grad school is the next thing and I'm going to go check the box. I want there to be a reason why you're going to take on this additional commitment, additional cost, additional time. And just like everything else, any financial decision you make, you want to make sure the ROI, however you define that, is justified.
No, I agree. I think that's a good point because I've given advice, real life experience. I've had financial planning people or people with finance degrees, but then they needed to go be eligible sit for the CFP, and they're like, I can go back and get a master's. And I'm like, or you could do it this way, which would be more cost effective. But then I think about like Jonah here.
Yeah.
I told him, go back, yes, because I want you to be able to sit for the CPA exam. Go do that last year of school, even though you know we know where you're going to start working.
Yep.
I still would love for you to go do that extra year so that you could be eligible for the CPA exam and the other requirements. So it really is. It's more of a personalized decision, but make sure the why intersects and because look, college has gotten expensive.
It's gotten real expensive.
So you better make sure. That's why a big hack I tell people is go check out community colleges and other things. Your diploma will look the same as somebody who went 4 years at that expensive school versus 2 years. You have to pay attention to the costs, and that's why if you're running up more student loan debt than what you're going to make when you come out of school, that ROI component gets really scary. And I love education. Everybody knows that I always tell people when I give speeches, I consider education the ladder of opportunity because you can start from the humblest of places, but if your brain works in a great way and you can educate yourself to do things, but we have to be careful that people don't use that goodwill of education and the opportunity it creates, that they've created these profit centers or costs that now are disconnected. It's all back to intrinsic value. If you're paying something more than what it's worth, it's just hard to get ahead. So as a person who loves education, has worked in education and done things for years, I just want you to be educated as you make those decisions, measure twice so that you don't fall into a trap.
Love that.
Fantastic. Ken B., we really appreciate you being here during the live stream and asking that question. And as always, we hope it helps. Want to do one more from Wes?
All right.
Let's see what Wes has got.
It says, my company has a very generous stock purchase plan with a 15% discount.
Yep.
How does this fall within the FOO?
Man, Wes, I'm so glad you asked this. I dropped my sticky notes, but I remember the question. I'm so glad you asked this because people ask us all the time, hey, I have this employee stock purchase plan. And for those of you that don't know, what this means is that every month or every pay period or every quarter, I'm allowed to defer some of my salary, some of my pay, and I can actually buy stock in the company for whom I work, which is a pretty neat thing. And not only can I buy stock in the company, they're actually going to sell it to me for less than it's worth. They're going to give me a 15% discount. So if our stock price is $100, I get to go buy it for $85.
But wait, there's more. A lot of them will choose the lowest of either the beginning of the quarter or the end of the quarter. So sometimes it's even bigger than a 15% discount. Keep going.
And so then the question becomes, okay, well, how do I think about this? Well, when I hear 15% discount on something that's like readily available and easily liquid, to me, Brian, that sounds a lot like
step number 2.
Step number 2. What's in step number 2?
Get that free money.
There it is.
Get that free money. Now, there is a caveat,
of course,
is that what do we share with people when you have your human capital, that's your hours and your wages, don't we need to keep that separated from your investment capital over the long term? Because you're just running a risk if you put all of everything with your employer plus your wages, there is a risk there.
You need to have a plan. So we love ESPPs, and we tell people take advantage of them to the full extent. But what we don't want you to do is becoming so overly concentrated that you got the ESPPs and maybe you also have RSUs and maybe you also have options to where all of your liquid wealth is tied up in your company, because exactly what Brian said, you're now concentrated in the company, both from a human capital as well as a liquid capital standpoint. So if you are going to participate, you ought to have some strategy. Okay, I'm going to do the ESPP, but once I hit 18 months or whatever your plan requires and I hit that qualifying disposition, I'm going to begin selling that off. Or maybe if you don't even have the requirement to hold, we know a lot of folks who will buy the ESPP today, immediately sell it. They're going to pay the ordinary income down the discount, but they're still going to be in a better situation having sold that because they were able to take advantage of the 15% discount. So just make sure, whatever your circumstance is, you have a plan for how you're going to navigate that moving forward. But I love ESPPs. I think they are certainly worth taking advantage of.
No doubt.
That's great. Thank you for the question, Wes. Like Bo said earlier, you're missing out if you don't subscribe to the channel. Let us know you're out there watching and stay up to date on all of the content that we're releasing throughout the week, whether it's Financial Advisors to Reacts, Making a Millionaire, mini shows, or our classic chock full episode all about personal finance and hopefully giving you a little more of that confidence so you can focus on what really matters, not just all the dollars and cents. So thank you for being here. As always, we're so glad we get to do this with you every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central.
So what y'all don't know is behind the scenes, we actually had 3 people sitting in the studio today.
Live studio audience.
Mix of interns, new hires. Kind of fun thinking about, because Bo and I got to give the whole abundance cycle speech. And I think it's worth mentioning, we do not take for granted that we get to come and hang out with you every week, multiple times a week now. And we load you up, give you as much free stuff, and you guys fulfill the abundance cycle in quantity. You know, we have planted the seeds. You know where our heart lies, is the heart of educators. And you show up and consider going and hiring us. And I appreciate every one of you who goes to aboundwealth.com and does the work with us. It really it keeps this thing going, and we don't take it for granted one bit. So we'll take advantage of all the free stuff. At moneyguy.com/resources, it's legit, and we want you to lean into that as much as possible, because what I love about the heart of the abundance cycle, you can do this for years, and you're going to know this works because we have no ask until you actually reach a level of success that your financial life actually gets complicated. Now, we've had quite a few questions today that have highlighted the thing we share all the time, is that money is a tool. It's not the goal. If you don't have your why lined up and understand what you're actually building for, I think you're going to find it's just not fulfilling. It's just not going to let you maximize this life that we have. And we're going to keep leaning into that and loading you up. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hanson, Money Guy team, out.